What's going on YouTube? It's Teej, back again with another video, and today I'm coming at you with my redraft for the 2021 NFL redraft. Obviously only 2 years of hindsight, but I want to see how much this could change up the draft order, who still goes where, who falls a lot, who ultimately sneaks into the first round. So let me hear your thoughts on this redraft down below in the comment section. Who went too high, who went too low, and of course, who's your favorite team? How are you feeling about that 2021 draft class? And maybe if you got the chance to in this redraft, what would you change for your favorite squad? Love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments section. But obviously want to support BetUS. They're the sponsor of today's video. All their links for sign-up bonuses and offers are down below in the description, so definitely check them out. Thank you, BetUS, for sponsoring. And now let's jump right into it with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Real surprise here. I'm going to stick with Trevor Lawrence. This one makes a ton of sense to stick with because he's their future franchise quarterback. He's the big reason why they turned around in the second half last year, because it started to click for him. Doug Peterson able to work his magic. So yeah, if they got the chance to, I think they'd stick and pick with T-Law. All right, then at number 2, we start to get some things that will change. Obviously, this was Zach Wilson. I'm going to go Justin Fields here. I mean, you could sway me that, Robert Saleh would want Micah Parsons. He'd want Jamar Chase, whatever. I think they still want quarterback, and, if there was a way they could avoid having to get Aaron Rodgers this offseason and have their guy take advantage of a quarterback on a rookie contract, they would. So I think Justin Fields, to me, he was the number 3 player on my board. I had Wilson ahead of him, but obviously with hindsight, Justin Fields kind of feels like the next best option behind Trevor Lawrence. So let's say the Jets roll out with Fields and try to find that future franchise quarterback. Then we get to San Francisco, and this is where I'm going to really feel like I'm going to get some people pissed off. Because again, you could pair up Micah Parsons with Nick Bosa. You could give them Jamar Chase, and Jamar Chase actually would be a really fun fit for that offense, especially after the yak skill set he put on display last year in Cincy. But I'll go Mac Jones. There was so much flack for San Francisco moving up and sounding like they were going to take Mac Jones. But with the hindsight now, it's like, yeah, I was one of those people who said, you got to go upside. You got to go for what Trey Lance can be. What does that amount to them? And then I look at what they did with Brock Purdy, and then I look at Mac Jones in New England being wasted in year 2 by Matt Patricia. And I'm like, well, man, it would have been the best situation for Mac Jones to be in, away from New England, more talent, better offensive scheme, better play caller itself. And then San Francisco in turn is just getting a souped up, Brock Purdy, which calling Mac Jones a souped up version of anybody feels a little wrong, but he would be the bigger, stronger arm. I'd argue even better decision maker, more prototypical size, just as accurate, if not more accurate. Again, he feels like Brock Purdy, but the guy who belonged to the first round. Yeah, I think this is kind of hard to deny that. I think a lot of people who gave them being San Francisco backlash and flack for thinking about taking Mac Jones at 3. We were wrong. That was the right fit, and I'd be really interested to see where San Francisco would be right now, because obviously we wouldn't be talking about them trading Trey Lance. Wouldn't have the Brock Purdy story. Jimmy Garoppolo might have been gone even earlier, right? So yeah, it's really interesting to kind of think about what could have been had they taken Mac Jones at 3. And then we get to Atlanta. This has got to be Jamar Chase for me. In the same offseason, they move on from Julio Jones. I mean, Kyle Pitts is a good player. Don't get me wrong. Kyle Pitts is still going to go to the top half of the first round. But I think they have an easier time getting the production out of Jamar Chase while they struggle getting that production out of Kyle Pitts. And again, they lost Julio Jones this offseason. Jamar Chase was the best receiver prospect in my eyes since Julio Jones. So that feels like a really seamless replacement in my eyes. Then we get to Cincinnati, and I kind of deliberated because, again, do I want to go Parsons here? Do I want to go with one of the corners maybe? But no, I'm going to go Jalen Waddle. So Chase off the board, and I even thought about Penei Sewell. That's certainly in play here because that was the big conversation. Jamar Chase, Penei Sewell there at 5 for Cincy. I'll go Jalen Waddle. I think he's been almost as good as Jamar Chase. I think he's proven to be a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. And him plus Tyreek Hill in Miami is fantastic. And I think him and T. Higgins could create a really nice 1-2 punch with differing skill sets and still give Joe Burrow a lot to work with there. So yeah, Jalen Waddle at 5 would not be a bad silver medal, so to speak, for the Cincinnati Bengals to land. Next, we get to the Miami Dolphins. This is where I'm going to have Penei Sewell come off the board. And I would love to see it in a world where they got Sewell. They still signed Teron Armstead. Sewell plays right tackle, and it feels like, man, that situation's great for Tua now. Now this obviously means, if, let's just say, everything did play out the same, it'd be Tyreek Hill plus Cedric Wilson maybe at that number 2 wide receiver spot. Not as good as Waddle and Tyreek Hill, but nonetheless, Teron Armstead, Penei Sewell, it's give and take for sure. But with those top 2 wide receivers gone, you could go Devonta Smith here, but I decided to give him a tackle, which be interesting to think about where that offensive line would be right now. But with Mike McDaniels coming there, the uber athletic Penei Sewell would actually be a fantastic fit for that offensive line and that blocking scheme. Then the Detroit Lions, this is where I'm going to have Micah Parsons come off the board. They actually have him as linebacker. And again, I might revisit my 2021 position rankings if people want to see that. I had Parsons as my number one off-ball linebacker and number one edge, with like the caveat that I think he could be the best edge in this class, but he was, kind of seen at the time as a linebacker who you could do a lot of blitzing with. But here in Detroit, no matter how you spin it, he'd be an upgraded linebacker, or he'd be, at the time, their best pass rusher at the edge. So true win there for Detroit, given what we know Micah Parsons has developed into. Carolina and Denver, I'm not going to change anything here because I think both these guys are actually really nice fits and big parts of what you think about when you think about Carolina, what you think about with Denver and that defense. J.C. Horn's such a physical, go get him at the line of scrimmage, man press specialist, and like his attitude feels like it transcends throughout that defense. So I really like that fit. I would have gone Surtain over Horn, but then the next pick to me should have been like Horn going to Denver. So I think it kind of played out in a good enough way. I honestly think the way time has played out, these two guys are in the right defenses for them. Maybe now with Vance Joseph in Denver, I'd like to see what J.C. Horn could be in a very man-press heavy defense in Denver. Surtain could have a little bit of adjustment, previously playing a lot of quarters, but I think he'll be fine. And ultimately, Surtain's one of those headline pieces you think about with that Denver defense, and he's emerged as one of the 10 best corners in the NFL, and some might make the argument he's even better than that. So, I'm not going to change anything there. But now we get to Dallas. Now, obviously, they traded down on draft night. This became the Eagles moving up to 10 to take Devonta Smith. But corner was a huge need. And maybe this is me, kind of jumping a little ahead of myself and kind of putting the horse in front of the wagon. But Tyson Campbell's coming off one hell of a season in Jacksonville and really has emerged as one of the best up-and-coming man-press corners in football. And you're talking about a Dallas defense that under Dan Quinn has played a whole lot of man coverage. So, considering he was the first pick of the second round, him jumping up 23 spots doesn't feel out of the realm of possibilities, considering we had Tariq Woolen go from 5th round category to top 10 pick in the 2022 redraft. So I don't think this leap is too crazy for Campbell, but it may be something that nobody really, I don't know if people were thinking about this, certainly not at the time, but even in a redraft sense where it's like, oh yeah, well, Tyson Campbell, he might be a top 10 pick in this class, especially if Dallas got the opportunity with Parsons off the board. Would they look in his direction? I think they would. Then we get to the New York Giants at pick number 11. And, this was a team that decided to trade back and ultimately get Kadarius Toney. So I'm stuck between two things here, Kyle Pitts or Devonta Smith. I'm going to go Kyle Pitts here. Again, I'm not going to knock either one. If they went Devonta Smith here, that totally makes sense, especially considering they eventually take Toney. And I felt like part of the reason they traded back with Chicago to get Toney was because they lost out on Devonta Smith. But Pitts could be that over-the-middle tight end that they kind of now have with Waller, who's also a big body, potential X-wide receiver if you really wanted to use him like that. So Pitts could kind of be two birds with one stone. An upgraded tight end while also giving you a big body wide receiver that you didn't really have. And I mean, they had Kenny Golladay at the time, but we know how that plays out. Kyle Pitts would definitely be an upgrade. And then Philadelphia just gets the opportunity to keep Devonta Smith. Now, you could easily flip this and just have Kyle Pitts plus Dallas Goedert, and Pitts plays some X wide receiver as well. And then you get A.J. Brown, and whoa, that's one hell of a outside duo if you did play Pitts more maybe at wide receiver. And then, Devonta Smith goes to New York. So I'm not mad about it. Either way it plays out. Get some NFC East teams, some pass catchers that I think they were looking at. Then we get to the Chargers, and I don't think they would take this pick back no matter what. I think they would be very content with just sticking and picking with Rashawn Slater. That first year, he looked like one of the 10 best tackles in football. Missed a lot of time in year 2, but assuming he comes back and he is the same dude he was as a rookie, he's going to be a special tackle throughout the rest of his career. Minnesota Vikings, I'm actually going to stick at offensive tackle here and go ahead and take Christian Darrisaw. This was a pick I would have been happy with at the time, but then they ended up trading back to 23 and still got Darrisaw. And he's emerged as one of the best up-and-coming tackles in football. So Minnesota, you just don't get the trade here. Sorry. Those two picks you got from the Jets didn't really work out. Kellen Mond, Wyatt Davis, nothing really special there anyway. So go ahead and stick a pick and take Christian Darrisaw. Then we get to the New England Patriots. And obviously, it's like this is where Mac Jones went, right? So I'm like, man, what do I want to do here? But I was thinking about the wide receiver room at the time, and a guy who fell to day 3, who with hindsight, no shot he makes it that far, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. We got our big 3 wide receivers out of the way, plus Kyle Pitts. Now I think it's Amon-Ra St. Brown time. And you play him in the slot, give you a big time volume target, and a guy who eats up over the middle of the field, works the underneath stuff, good with the ball in his hands. I mean, this gives them that wide receiver one that New England's been looking for since this 2021 draft class. So actually, with hindsight, this would be an awesome fit for that offense. Then we get to Arizona. I'm going to go Elijah Vera Tucker here. He was a player I had a hard time mocking for. And honestly, you could even sell me on one of the guys who goes a little bit later. He just plays one position versus Vera Tucker plays guard and tackle. So you could even kind of convince me to go in another name, in another direction. We'll talk about that once we get there. But interior offensive line was a need then, has become an even bigger need coming into the 2023 offseason. So I think, if they got the chance to, Elijah Vera Tucker fall in their lap, they'd be happy with that. I even think I saw reports that was their plan until that he got, until he was taken off the board by the New York Jets. Now we get to the Las Vegas Raiders. And this was, Alex Leatherwood. They then followed up with Trevon Merrick in the second round. And because of that, I'm kind of using this as incentive to go ahead and take Javon Holland, guy who went in the second round, certainly deserves to be a first rounder. Took a step back last year, but such a great playmaker. You can use him as a blitzer, great tackler. Really not much you can't ask Javon Holland to do. And he's one of the best safeties in football already in my eyes. So him over, back on track. He was okay as a rookie, but Holland so far has been the better pro, which makes that secondary better in Vegas. I just love how much you can do with Holland, especially now that I know Patrick Graham's going to become the DC of the Raiders. I love the idea of him being this flexible DC, wanting to do a lot of different things, and having a cornerstone piece like Javon Holland who would be up for that task. Then we get to Miami here at pick number 18, and I'm going to actually go ahead and stick and pick and have this be the same selection it was in real life, and Jalen Phillips. He was just so good down the stretch last year that it's hard for me to want to go in a different direction here. And I look at the other edge rushers available. Kwity Paye, been a good run defender, but hasn't really kicked it another gear. We'll talk about some of these other guys later on. Odafe Owe, Greg Rousseau, Cesar Jalari, who's missed a ton of time and hasn't been anything special really as a player on the field. So Phillips, let's just pick up with where he ended last year, and let's see what he can do in year 3. And I think Miami would be really well suited by having that game-breaking type of edge, and it certainly helps too. His ramp up in production came right around the same time they added Bradley Chubb. So adding another dude on the other side of the edge certainly made Jalen Phillips that much better. And let's just say, hey, maybe the same thing plays out here. Next is Washington. They went Jamin Davis. I'm going to give them the better linebacker here in Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Now, would it be a small box with him and Cole Holcomb? Yes. But is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah a better player so far than Jamin Davis? Yes. Super rangy in coverage, can shoot gaps, good tackler. You're just going to occasionally get blocked out of place. That's kind of the downside of it. The only reason he fell out of the first round was because of a heart condition apparently that popped up in his medical that then was, identified as a mistake. And it hasn't been an issue since. So, should have been a first rounder in my eyes. So then we get to Chicago. And here, I think I'm going to piss people off here. We'll go Trey Lance. So look, the Bears took a quarterback here. I think they wanted to find a guy long-term who was not Andy Dalton, right? And if, in a world where Chicago didn't trade up to 11, right, and Justin Fields is gone, and Mac Jones is gone, Trevor Lawrence is gone, and we know Zach Wilson is what he is, and this is a redraft. We are taking hindsight into account here. We don't really know what Trey Lance is. And if Chicago could stay at 20 and have a quarterback fall into their lap who had that similar skill set that they loved about Justin Fields, just from a smaller school and a little bit more raw in regards to playing time, I think they'd be willing to take that risk. So, it's tough in the redraft sense because I am taking hindsight into account, and we haven't seen a whole lot of Lance, and he's missed so much time, and he is still so raw. But maybe things play out a little different in Chicago. It's really hard to tell. But I think if Chicago had the chance to stick and pick at 20 and a quarterback fell to their lap, I can't imagine a 2021 draft where Chicago passes on that QB. So I'm also kind of taking that into account as well. Indianapolis here then at 21. I'm going to stick with Kwity Paye here. Again, he's been a solid run defender. He just hasn't taken it to another gear as a pass rusher. Freaky athletic, sub-Devils 3-cone, and it was that type of bend, but being 6'4", mid-260s. It was like, man, Kwity Paye has the stuff to be a special edge rusher in an edge class that lacks that guy who could be double-digit, doesn't have that Chase Young, Bosa, Myles Garrett type of dude. Paye's athleticism was kind of the closest thing we had to kind of look at then. And then, the recruiting status of Jalen Phillips, and if not for the concussions, what could he have been? But, Paye just has not taken that step forward as a pass rusher. Maybe he does in year 3. That's why I'm kind of content with sending him back to Indianapolis here, because he's not been bad. He just hasn't been great, and they needed great at edge, especially from 2021. This was like a time where the Colts were really competitive. If they got that dude on the edge, that defense could take it to another level, and unfortunately, Paye just hasn't been that yet. But not to say that it can't still happen. Tennessee, so obviously this was Caleb Farley in real life, and that makes this a little tricky because I still want to go corner. So because of that, I'm going to go Greg Newsome, who I actually think has been a pretty good player. MJ Emerson may have earned that other starting spot and provoked the potential trade request that may or may not be there with Greg Newsome wanting to leave Cleveland. Maryland, but he was really good his rookie year too. So if Tennessee got the chance to do it again after seeing how good Newsome was a rookie versus what they've gotten so far to Farley, I think they would change out what corner they take there. And I think Newsome would actually be a really good fit for that defense. So then we get to the Jets here at 23. And this was tough for me. And yeah, now in retrospect, I kind of wish I put the other guy where I had Elijah Vera Tucker go at 16 to the Cardinals. But I'm going to go with Creed Humphrey here. Center does eventually emerge as a need for the Jets, and Connor McGovern can play guard. And then I'm going to have the Steelers take Landon Dickerson. So we'll take these two back to back. Humphrey, this easily could be, Humphrey, this could easily be Elijah Vera Tucker, and then you make Creed Humphrey the pick at 16. Because you look at what Creed Humphrey's emerged into, he's one of the best centers in football, and some would argue he's the best center in football right now. And maybe he should go higher than 23. I get that, especially when there's another interior offensive lineman take it off the board. But a guy who plays center only versus a guy who can play guard and actually be a pretty good tackle, which we've seen Elijah Vera Tucker do. What do you weigh more there, the position value? I would go with the guard that can play tackle versus the true center. But who's been the better player overall? I would have to say Creed Humphrey. So again, you could easily convince me that these two picks need to be flipped. And in that case, the Jets just get Elijah Vera Tucker, Cardinals get Rodney Hudson replacement, and Creed Humphrey. It really works out. And then the Steelers, instead of Najee Harris, I got to go Landon Dickerson here. I'd have been happy with Landon Dickerson at the time, center guard flexibility, and Pittsburgh was trying to fix their run game with a running back behind a terrible offensive line, which their thinking just was backwards at the time. If you patch up that offensive line, the run game was going to follow suit. But instead, they just tried to fix the problem with the wrong, piece on the offense, right? Like they addressed an issue through the wrong position group, and I'm not going to make that same mistake. Now, Najee Harris is a good player, but especially in this running back class that featured Javonte Williams, Travis Etienne, Michael Carter in the later rounds. Like, I don't know if you needed to have Najee here at 24. Anyways, we get to Jacksonville here at 25. This actually became Travis Etienne in real life. But here, I'm going to go Trevon Moehrig. I still think safety is kind of a need for the Jags, and I love the idea of Moehrig going to Jacksonville, playing free, strong, or nickel. I was happy with any of it. I loved his flexibility and his versatility across the field. Really good tackler, good in man and zone. I mean, there was a lot to like about Trevon Moehrig as a player, and especially considering his position flexibility. That's why I kind of saw him and Javon Holland very similar to one another. One just did it at TCU, one did it at Oregon. And one was maybe a little bit better in the run game versus Holland, who was a little bit less maybe than Moehrig was. But I think this would be an upgrade there for the Jags secondary. And I look at the safety room right now. Trevon Moehrig might be the best guy had he been taken by Jacksonville. Next, we get to Cleveland, and this was a tough one here. I'm going to go Caleb Farley. I still think that there's a shot Caleb Farley works out. Now, I'm not saying it's huge, but with Greg Newsome off the board, I just think about what team would still be willing to take that chance? And I think Cleveland's one of them. I think they would say, hey, at 26, if Farley works out, this is going to be looked at as one of the biggest steals of the draft. And if it doesn't, hey, it's a back half the first rounder. It's okay. And ultimately, with where that cornerback room is eventually gone, they would have been able to kind of suffer this blow a little bit better than other teams. But the upside would have been undeniable. If Farley worked out, him plus Denzel Ward, oh my gosh, that would be a crazy secondary. So I'm not saying Farley's better than the guys that go after this, but I think Cleveland would have been one of those teams that would have been willing to take that risk. And they drafted a corner, so I still think it was something that was on their mind and something they wanted to go ahead and try to tackle in the first round. Then we get to the Baltimore Ravens at pick 27. And I'm going to stick with Rashad Bateman here. We haven't really gotten to see a whole lot of him because he missed so much time last year. But we're going to get to see what he looks like, and especially in a role where I think it's better suited for him. This was a good wide receiver room or wide receiver draft class. Like Jamar Chase is a 1. Kyle Pitts potentially could be a 1 if you viewed him as a wide receiver, or just from a target perspective. Pitts, even as a tight end, could be that number 1 volume target guy. Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, all those guys potentially 1 when it comes to targets. I don't know if Rashad Bateman was ever that dude. Especially once we got to like Indy and we realized he wasn't 6'3", 220 like he was listed at Minnesota. Instead, he's like 6 foot and 190, 195, 200 pounds. Like much more just middle of the road wide receiver frame. So because of that, him as a wide receiver too, I think is actually a better situation for him to be in. And that's what he gets now with, Zay Flowers coming to Baltimore, Odell Beckham Jr. being there, Mark Andrews as well. So I actually think he's in a better role now. So I don't want to change it up. And I do want to put more weapons around Lamar Jackson. And at the time, Lamar needed weapons. And still to this point, we were saying that throughout this offseason. So I don't want to take one of those few weapons they did try to put around Lamar Jackson. New Orleans, this is also a tricky one because we just haven't seen Peyton Turner, but a guy that did take a step forward last year was Greg Rousseau. And this was the pick I mocked a ton. I know a lot of people did too because he's this insane frame, super long arm, pretty good athlete. He kind of has a lot of those Saints traits that made them kind of like a Peyton Turner. Maybe they would be willing to take the shot on Greg Rousseau, especially considering what season ago with the Bills, and inside-out flexibility too. I think that's something the Saints would like, as you have the potential to move Russo inside and pass situations because of those arm length, and he's 6'7". So yeah, I think he'd actually be a really good fit for that Saints defensive line. All right, next up, we get to the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to go with Asante Samuel Jr. This was a fit I loved at the time. So, again, maybe this is just me falling back into old habits, a pick I used to mock all the time. But as they were transitioning this Joe Barry cover 4 heavy defense, Eric Stokes has worked out. But I really do wonder how good Asante Samuel Jr. would be in this defense. So if you're a Green Bay fan and say, no, it should stay Stokes, I'm fine with that. But I think Asante Samuel Jr. would be an even better fit, and they give you even more playmaking ability on top of what you have with Jair Alexander and then what you've had with the safeties the last couple seasons and things of that nature. So I think ASJ could be even better than what Stokes has been in that defense. But, that is me projecting a little bit. Buffalo Bills, I'm going to go Javonte Williams. This might be a little surprising, but, for me, my running back rankings was Najee, Javonte at 2, then Travis Etienne at 3. After seeing Javonte Williams last year, it's kind of hard not to say that what we've gotten to see, he hasn't been the most, at least fun to watch, but maybe the best running back of the bunch. Najee just lacks that over-the-top, big playability. I say over-the-top, those, big chunk plays. He can pick up 25 yards in a long run. He doesn't much more 5 yards and a pound of dust, right? Like his long runs are, 10 to 15 yard, which is fine. But Williams and Etienne both have much more chunk play potential than a Najee Harris and breakaway speed potential. And Etienne's fine. I think he's a good receiver. I'm not mad about if you wanted to go Etienne over Williams here. I just loved what we got to see out of Javonte Williams last year. Just a violent runner who's also super shifty, has great speed, has good pass catching ability. Like Javonte Williams to me could be a guy who puts himself in that conversation for being a top 5 running back if he stays healthy this upcoming season, and depending on how much time he ultimately misses from getting hurt last year. But want to have the conversation, and I just think about Javonte Williams in that backfield. Oh my God, him and Josh Allen, that'd be an insane backfield to try to tackle. Just that read option, I don't know what you're supposed to do as a DN. Anyways, getting back to Baltimore here at 31. I'm going to go Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. This is a bit of a projection on my end, and maybe you keep this Odafe Oweh. I'd be fine with that. But Joe Tryon-Shoyinka transformed his body right before this draft, and he took out, he sat out the year of COVID. So kind of give him the opportunity to kind of really bulk up and get into NFL shape. And I think year 3, he's going to take a huge step forward. He got better from year 1 to year 2. And I think because Shaq Barrett, no guarantees, the same guy, Tampa Bay is leaning on him to become that dude. And I think he'll be up for the task. Again, great physical stature, great athletic traits, and also has like the strength to go with it. It's just been a little bit of work in progress as learning how to become a better pass rusher, refining the move set, becoming a better, chess player, so to speak, with an offensive lineman. But we saw that improvement from year 1 and 2, and I'm banking on it gets even more, even bigger step forward in the right direction in year 3. So I'm banking on Joe Tryon-Shoyinka in a breakout season. I think Baltimore at 31, given what we've seen so far, would be able to jump all over that. And considering Odafe Oweh, there have been flashes, but, outside of, 2-3 handful of flashes, hasn't been enough to really change the defense and really take that edge unit to another level in Baltimore. And then for Tampa Bay, this is a position they always draft, but to me, Christian Barmore should have been a first rounder. But, attitude concerns, I guess, is why he fell out of the first round, whatever about that. And once he got to New England, he has been a solid pass rusher there on the inside. Doesn't do much against the run, but we'd be sending him to Tampa Bay where they already have Vita Vea, and he would just get to focus on being an electric pass rusher. So love that fit a ton, and it would save, future, early second round picks in Logan Hall and first rounders with Kalijah Kancey to be addressed elsewhere on that Tampa Bay roster. But guys, that'll do it for my 2021 NFL redraft. I've gone ahead and shown you each and every pick one more time. Let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Where was I right? Where was I wrong? Who goes too high? Who goes too low? And of course, who's your favorite team? And are you happy with the redraft selection I gave your team? And would you go in a different direction if you didn't like the pick? Let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hit the like button. Seriously helps me and this video and the channel out a ton if you do. And subscribe if you're new and like what you saw in today's video. That's going to do it for me. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teej, and I am signing off.